Firstly, the statement you referred to is a part of propaganda campaign and information war, if you like it better, being conducted by Ukrainian authorities since the beginning of this military operation. So I would not be ready to make any comments on this specific statement. As far as the current situation is concerned, the major reason Russia rebuilds its military presence in southeastern Ukraine is to save lives. The basic sense, the basic idea of our military operation is not about taking territories out of Ukraine. It's about protecting and rescuing human lives, protecting people who refused to accept the state coup d'etat in February 2014 in Ukraine. The Ukrainian authorities, starting from 2014, tried to present the events of that moment as a democratic revolution by the Ukrainian society against corrupted authorities of President Yanukovych. This is not the fair description of those events, because it was a coup d'etat and it was certain political forces in Ukraine who took power by force. And these certain political powers in Ukraine, they have a very clear political platform. They want to get rid of Russians in Ukraine. They want to build up the Ukrainian state as a 100 Ukrainian state, where there is just one language, there is just a certain system of education, there is just one history and things like that. And that political platform was denied, resolutely denied by a very big part of the Ukrainian society, mostly in the southeastern part of Ukraine, which is populated by native Russians or Russian-speaking people. And since that time, the Ukrainian authorities try to hit these people. They try to force them to accept the different model of the Ukrainian state and the Ukrainian society, where there will not be any space for these Russian-speaking people. And the major sense of the Russian military operation in Ukraine, once again, is to protect these people, protect their lives, protect their human rights. And in case some regrouping of Russian military force at a certain moment is needed in order to make this operation more efficient and more resultative, of course that will be done. I am not a military expert and I will not be ready to make any specific comments on the military parameters of that operation, but I understand perfectly well that the outcome of that operation depends very much on how efficient we are and will be in protecting human beings and protecting their human rights.
Does regrouping means that there had been a mistake militarily?
No, I don't think so. Of course, we have to take into account circumstances which are changing all the time. We see that the Ukrainian part receives in huge amounts military equipment, armaments from mostly from NATO countries. And of course, it does change the situation on site, so to say. And what was logical 3 months ago or 6 months ago may not be logical any longer right now due to changed circumstances. But again, this is everything goes according to the military planning, and I will advise you not to over-exaggerate the right now ongoing happenings and events in this part where the conflict is developing. According to the information I received from our military people, the situation is under control. The situation is developing according to our plans, and of course, the situation will sooner or later take us to the final resolution according to the Russian plans in this situation. Again, firstly, I don't like the definition you use. It's not a war. We do not have a war against Ukraine. We protect people in Ukraine in a situation when any other country in the West, unfortunately South Korea included, though you are not in the West, but you are in the same group of countries, have since 2014 not done a single step in order to protect these people. We remember how the situation developed in former Yugoslavia in late 90s, where the argument of protecting people, protecting civil population, was the major argument of NATO when it started to bombing former Yugoslavia. In case of Ukraine, nobody in NATO cared about these people, and since 2014, 16,000 people were killed in southeastern Ukraine by new Ukrainian authorities, 16,000 people, out of which, this is according to the estimations of the United Nations, official estimation, out of which 3,000 people were civilians. And no reaction from the West, nothing. We addressed the United Nations, we addressed the OSCE, we addressed the Human Rights Court in Strasbourg. Zero reaction. Everybody pretended that everything is okay because everybody in the West, everybody in NATO wanted to have Ukraine in NATO. And this is how they started to ignore real problems which which appeared in Ukraine since the coup d'etat in 2014. And this is how Russia, after all attempts, repeated attempts to find a solution, collective solution for these problems without using military force, had to take this final step, starting the special military operation, because any other option was not supported by the West, by NATO countries, unfortunately. So this is the reason we call it a special military operation, because the purpose of this operation is not about having war with Ukraine. It's about protecting a part of Ukrainian population against the military operation by the Ukrainian authorities.
In the beginning of this special military operation, Russia said that this military operation would end soon. Why is it still going on?
It is still going on because Ukraine receives very big amount of military assistance from abroad, and providing that military assistance to Ukraine, countries who do it prolong the conflict. They put human lives in danger. The outcome of this operation will be the same, but more people will be wounded, more people will be killed due to the position of NATO countries trying to assist Ukrainian authorities by military means. And this is why this situation has not yet come to the final end. And the final end, I would like to repeat it and to recall the position of the Russian president. The final aim is to demilitarize Ukraine and to denazify Ukraine, make Ukraine a democratic state with no involvement of Nazist ideology, which is a clear case for everyone who watches the developments in modern Ukraine. You probably pretend you don't see the descriptions, or they are on TV screens, at least in my country. Probably they are not shown in South Korea because you don't want to know the truth. But anybody who wants to know the truth will very easily discover huge manifestations in the streets of Kiev and other big Ukrainian cities, people carrying the flags and any other symbols of Nazi Germany and Nazi ideology. We see that people who collaborated with Nazi Germany during the Second World War in Ukraine are now declared as national heroes of Ukraine. So, and if you will check the school books which are being used in Ukrainian schools, you will discover very easily there the glorification of Nazist ideology. It's absolutely 100% clear. We've made our position very clear. It's public. It does not need any further clarification. If South Korea participates in this program, which is absolutely illogical and which is absolutely illegal, of course, South Korea will be covered with the same type of response measures, economic measures, as any other country participating in this program. And in this situation, it's up to you to decide whether you want to be in or out.
U.S. government announced that Russia is in the process of purchasing millions of rockets and artillery shells from North Korea for use in Ukraine. What is your reaction to this?
To check the position of the Russian government, not the American government, because the United States government is not impartial. The position of the Russian government, it was declared officially in the United Nations and on many other occasions, is that this information is false. It is not confirmed by any evidence, and it is a kind of a political propaganda, and again a part of an information war being conducted by the United States of America against Russia, and among other things against North Korea in this case. So I may just cite the official statements by the Russian government, and this is it.
Why do you think the U.S. government announced this?
I am not in position to interpret the intentions of the American government, you know. You should ask that question Americans, not Russians. But for me, it's absolutely clear that the very well-known principle of divide and rule is being used by American politicians, by American diplomats very widely and frequently, and the actions of the United States of America anywhere in the world do not bring stability to the regions where they are active, and this is also the case with Korea Peninsula. Unfortunately, I believe that the role of the United States of America in Korea Peninsula is negative. It's not positive, and the counter reaction of North Korea in most cases is somehow provoked by the actions of the United States of America in this region.
Can you confirm that none of the North Korean soldiers or North Korean weapons currently have been mobilized for the Ukrainian war?
I have no information about that. I'm not in a position to make that kind of comments, but absolutely frankly, I have no information confirming this theory. If you expect from Russia a behavior which is in line with the UN Charter and its obligations in the Security Council, you should firstly expect the same type of behavior from other members of the United Nations and its Security Council. The anti-Russian sanction campaign, which is being conducted now by a group of Western states, is absolutely against the obligations of this group of countries according to the UN Charter. It's absolutely against their commitments. Certain countries which are members of the Security Council, it's absolutely against their commitments in the Security Council. So this problem is a complex one, and we need to bring the mankind, the international community, back to the United Nations and its charter. Russia has never been the first country and will not be the first country to break the commitments and obligations according to the UN Charter. But if you expect that Russia will be the only country which continues to follow these commitments and obligations, you will be making a mistake. This is a huge problem. Again, it's not about North Korea. It's not about Ukraine. It's about the collective security arrangements. It's about the respect for international law. And we know for sure that the Western countries, they do not any longer mention the definition of international law in their official statements. It's a rule-based order. And if you start asking these countries, could you tell us what are the rules? Could you show us any description of these rules? The answer will always be, look, it's quite clear and understandable. It does not need any clarification. Hopefully, the South Korean government will also see the hazards of such a trend, such a tendency, and will come back to the traditional position of protecting the international law instead of first violating it, and secondly, trying to force Russia to be the only country who continues to follow the obligations and commitments according to the international law. It will not work that way. The current position of South Korea is the choice of South Korean government. It does bring much negative to our bilateral relations. This is not the Russian choice. This is your choice. And I believe that this choice contradicts with the national interests of South Korea as a state and the population of South Korea. So my only advice to the government of South Korea, if I'm in a position to make any advices, is to reconsider this position and to start acting more objectively, not just as a part of a certain community, ideological in the first-hand community. Taking into account the national interests of your country, Russia is definitely ready to go on developing good relations, constructive relations with South Korea, but one needs two to dance tango, and as for now, we do not see any signals from South Korean government of the same kind. And this is I believe, a bad period in our relations, and hopefully the government of South Korea will have courage to confess that, to admit that the previous decisions had been a mistake, and that this position, this policy, has to be reconsidered.
Mr. Senator, this is an important one. Concerns are growing over the possibility of North Korea's nuclear test. What position do you expect Russia to come up with if North Korea actually conduct a nuclear test?
Our position is clear. It has not been changed. Anyhow, Russia does not consider North Korea as a nuclear power, according to the NPT treaty. Russia believes that the tests of that kind violate the non-proliferation regime, and definitely Russia will not be ready to support this type of actions by the North Korean side. But I would like to reiterate what I have said previously. in most cases, in terms of North Korean nuclear program, in other actions of North Korean government, in most cases, this type of behavior is being provoked by the United States of America, with participation of South Korea sometimes. And I do believe that there is a chance to find a mutually acceptable solution, and Russia has always tried to contribute to that mutually acceptable resolution of problems you mentioned and other problems which exist on Korean Peninsula, and we will be ready to act as a responsible and constructive participant in this process in the future as well. This will be a very important meeting, and I believe everybody knows that this is the first time since the start of pandemic of COVID-19 when the Chinese leader leaves his country, and I believe that the meeting, the summit of Shanghai Cooperation Organization is a very important reason for that decision, but I believe that equally important is the possibility to meet, to have a bilateral, full-scale bilateral meeting with the president of Russia, Mr. Putin, because very much of what is happening in the world and what will be happening in the world depends on what Russia and China and Russia think about that. We've been in 3 decades in a situation when the United States of America and their closest allies in the West tried to move the whole world into a unipolar construction where everything will be dependent just on what the United States of America believe and their allies think. This is not the case. The world is multipolar, and both Russia and China and any other country, South Korea included, have the natural right to promote their national interests, to protect their positions in the world. And I believe that cooperation between Russia and China is becoming as the more and more essential part of that multipolar construction. Our relations are in a very good shape. Our approaches to most major international problems are very close to each other. Probably they do not coincide, but they are very close to each other. And what we do together, we do it not just in the interest of our 2 countries. We do it in the interest of the global security and global stability, because we believe that the world cannot be ruled from just one center. Either United States of America or NATO or any other center. And what Russia and China do is not an attempt to replace one center of power with some other center of power. No. We want to see the world developing towards a multipolar, multilateral model, the way it did not do the previous 3 decades. The responsibility of what has gone wrong since the end of the Cold War, the responsibility of that is 100% on the Western side. But we try to recover this damage and to make the world safer in comparison with what it has been until now. I am not in a position to make that kind of comments because I do not work in the presidential administration. So excuse me, no comments on that.
You know, Ukraine has consistently raised concerns that Russia could use tactical nuclear missiles in the war. Is there a possibility of Russia using nuclear weapons?
Our position on using nuclear weapons is absolutely clear, open, and public. We will be ready to use nuclear weapons only in two cases. One, if nuclear weapon is being used against Russia and its territory as a response measure. And secondly, if other types of military or economic force are being used against Russia in a volume, in a format which hazards the existence of Russia as a state, as a nation. We are definitely not in that situation as for now, so my answer is definitely no.
That means is Russia never using nuclear weapon in this war?
As long as Russia is not threatened the way I have described, Russia is not going to use nuclear weapons. Very stupid theory, because the plant is under control of Russian military forces. So we do not shell the sites which are under our control. As simple as that. Along with that, we have so much evidence of the Ukrainian shelling of Zaporozhye nuclear plant. There are hundreds, thousands of that type of evidence, and all of them have been presented to IAEA inspection mission, which was there the previous week. Unfortunately, the mission had not enough courage to make any public statements on that. They pretended that did not belong to their mandate, but they have this evidence, and this evidence is undisputable. It's Ukrainian who shell this plant, and it's Ukrainians who try to provoke a technological nuclear catastrophe, disaster in this area. And it's an absolutely irresponsible behavior which sets under nuclear hazard the whole world.
Even though Russia currently occupies the power plant, but Ukraine will be the most damaged if it explodes because it's located inside Ukraine territory.
You know, I'm not in a position to explain how Ukrainians think, because they behave, they think absolutely illogically. So I believe that my theory is that Ukrainian authorities are ready to take that damage in order to present themselves as victims, as a country which has been destroyed by this military operation, and by that reinforce their positions in the Western world and get more support, military support, economic support, financial support from the West. This is it, and again, it's absolutely irresponsible. Well, it's up to experts to take that kind of decisions. This decision should not be a political one. It should be a professional one. Any measures which may safeguard the plant and minimize any risks of a nuclear catastrophe are to be considered. They are to be considered by professional experts, not by politicians.
A lot of civilians have died in Ukraine since the war broke out. Ukraine claims Russia is responsible for this. What do you think about this?
The tempo of the Russian military operation, which is not that high, depends 100% on our intention to limit number of civilian victims and casualties within civilian population of Ukraine to zero. Believe me, we have enough military power to move ahead in a higher speed. But that will mean casualties and death cases for civilians, which we definitely have tried to avoid all this time, and which we will continue avoiding. This is the only explanation. civilians were being killed by the Ukrainian authorities since 2014 and until February 2022, with unfortunately no clear reaction from the Western world. And this is the only reason why Russia decided to start its military operation. The aim of this operation is to protect civilian population of Ukraine and of those parts of former Ukraine who have decided to declare their independence. The aims of the Russian military operation is those military parts of Ukrainian state machine which have been conducted crimes, military crimes against its own populations before February 2022. And if you recall the previous developments, Russia has initiated and participated actively in peace talks with Ukrainians 3 or 4 months ago. The only reason why these peace talks had been interrupted was the decision of the United States of America and NATO countries to start supporting Ukraine by military means. And since that time, more people die, more people are being wounded, but the main reason of that is the military support of Ukraine from outside. It's not the Russian military operation again. It's about actions of Ukrainian military machine, because the major difference between what Russia does in military terms in Ukraine and Ukraine does in military terms in Ukraine is that Ukrainians, with no hesitation, hit the civil objects, they hit schools, they hit hospitals. They do not care that civilian population are being hit. And that's a clear difference between the behavior of Ukrainian military people and the Russian military people in Ukraine. It depends on how Ukrainian government behaves. In case they will stop their attempts to make Ukraine a ethnically clean Ukrainian state, as soon as they will declare that they stop ethnic cleansing in Ukraine, everything is possible. Everything is possible. Once again, this situation is not about territories. This situation, very tragic situation, but it's about people. It's about human beings. And as soon as the Ukrainian authorities, the same way we had the comparable crisis in our country. I mean, the crisis in Chechnya, in the Chechen Republic. And you remember that, firstly, the Russian authorities treated people in Chechnya as separatists, terrorists, criminals, and we tried to force them to live inside of Russia by military means. Only when we started negotiations with Chechens, only when we started to treat these people as Russian citizens with their rights, with their interests, the conflict had been immediately solved. And Chechnya is now probably one of the strongest parts of the Russian Federation, not because anybody else forced these people to live together, but because they were treated properly as an integral part of the Russian society. And this is how we managed to solve that conflict. The Ukrainian authorities have to go the same way. And in case the more they delay this change of their policy, the more people inside of Ukraine stop considering themselves as integral part of Ukraine, as Ukrainian citizens. Time is running out for Ukrainian authorities, and it's not due to any specific behavior of Russia. It is due to the specific and wrong behavior of Ukraine and its current authorities.